new EKOS poll. So EKOS is a polling agency. Their CEO's name is Frank Graves. And Graves recently published this poll that was conducted January 17 to 21, so fairly recently, just this past weekend, where this is, a few weeks after Trudeau announced his resignation. So this is post-Trudeau. And according to Graves, the Liberals are making a huge comeback. So all the other polls are showing that the Conservatives are leading the Liberals by like 20%. So like the Conservatives at the other polls, they're polling at like, I don't know, mid 40s at this point, almost 50, not quite, but 45 to 47 to 48, something like that along those lines. And then the Liberals are all the way down at like 20%. But here's the poll that Frank Graves just published recently. So apparently, according to this, the Liberals are at 32%, which is down only 1% from their performance from their election performance in 2021. So this puts like the Conservatives and the Liberals almost neck and neck. And under this model, if you were to kind of model out what this poll would look like if it was actually the case, then the Conservatives will win a minority government. I think the majority cutoff point is 172 seats, and the Conservatives will only win like 150 something seats if this poll was correct. And then the Liberals would be not too far behind. They would be over 100 seats, and it would be a Conservative minority government if this was the case, if it doesn't tighten up a little more. And, obviously, when this poll was put out, a lot of people are liking this to something that happened in the US. So if you guys remember correctly, or remember back then, we talked about the Ann Seltzer poll from Iowa before the US election. So that one was a poll that was put out by a supposedly A+ rated pollster in Iowa, which is a very conservative state, where Trump won by like, double-digit percentages in the last election in 2020. And Ann Seltzer, who's the most well-known pollster in the state, she put out this poll saying that Kamala Harris was ahead of Trump by 3% in the state. And, that kind of injected a ton of steroids into the Democratic base, and everyone was like super happy. And everyone was saying that, oh, like if an A++ rated pollster is saying this, then Kamala Harris is winning Iowa. And then if she's like winning Iowa, then that means she's winning all 7 swing states as well. And that was totally the opposite of what happened, because she lost Iowa by like 13% in the end. So yeah, it was a huge difference between what the Ann Seltzer poll was saying and the final result. And a lot of people are saying that this poll by EKOS is kind of the same deal, where it's just so far off from any other poll that has come out recently. Like even like polls that tend to stray left a little are still showing the NDP and the Liberals kind of almost neck and neck. Maybe the Liberals are still a little bit higher than the NDP, but they're polling at around the low 20s for every other poll for the Liberals. And then this one, they come in with 32%. So my question to you is, oh, by the way, like people are criticizing Frank Graves, the CEO of EKOS, on X, and he's just blocking everyone who is like even a little bit slightly critical of him. So maybe that's not a good sign that he's like very confident in what he's saying, if he's blocking everyone who's just asking for, more detailed info, like how did you exactly get this, right? Like who did you poll? But yeah, anyways, the poll is what it is. And my question to you guys is, what do you guys think of this kind of EKOS versus the world situation? Do you think that there is a chance? You guys are probably not gonna, be super convinced of this poll, but you guys think that there is a chance that this is actually what's going on? Are the Liberals really making a comeback after the Trudeau resignation? Because that's kind of the narrative that Graves has been presenting, right? That Trudeau's gone, all the people that we're abandoning the Liberals. We're just mad at Trudeau. But now that he's gone, now that we have Carney or Freeland, the people are going to come back and vote Liberal again. At least that's the narrative that is being presented. Do you guys think that there's a chance that that's what's happening, or do you think that Graves is totally off his rockers and he's smoking crack? Like, what do you guys think is going on here?
The first thing that comes to mind is that, like, is EKOS working for the Liberal Party? Like, you compared it to the Iowa situation, but I don't want to go. I don't want to accuse them of being corrupt, because sometimes you do get outlier polls, and they do have, and sometimes the outlier poll ends up being right. I don't know. I'm not convinced that this poll, being such an outlier, is accurate. It's also just based on my own anecdotal evidence. Like, I know a lot of people who traditionally vote, Liberal and NDP, who've never voted Conservative, that are still voting Conservative. And I asked around this week when I saw this poll, and they're still voting Conservative. So it's just like, maybe my sample size isn't scientific. I'm just asking friends, but I'm just not seeing huge movement. Where I will say the chance that the EKOS poll is correct is that maybe the Liberals are pulling away from the NDP, and maybe they're pulling away from the Bloc Québécois and Green Party. Perhaps the lapsed Liberals who were kind of sick and tired of Justin Trudeau came back to the party when he resigned. And so, I mean, there's a chance the Liberals can get 30% with a new leader in the next election. This still puts the Conservatives in majority territory, so that's why where this poll isn't an outlier. But if when the election is called, if EKOS poll is still such an outlier, and then it ends up being like an Iowa situation where the Conservatives end up getting like 48% of the vote, then I guess we should revisit this, and everybody in the world is going to go after Frank Graves. This could end his career, or this could make him the greatest pollster in Canadian history. Who knows?
Yeah, and just to kind of jump in here, this situation is still a little bit different. I know a lot of people are likening it to the Iowa thing, but it's a little different than the Iowa thing in the sense that the Iowa poll was just one poll that came out. I think this was like a few weeks before the election. So it came out right before the election, and then that was just one and done, right? So, but with EKOS, you say that it might be an outlier. Well, if it is an outlier, they've been an outlier for the past like 3 polls that they've done. So I'm just on the 338 Canada poll aggregator right now. The poll that I showed you guys is actually like an average between the last 2 polls that they did, but they did one on January 18th, which was the latest one, and that had the Liberals at 30%. So 1% higher than the average that I showed you guys. And then before that, there was one on January 15th, and then the Liberals were at 28%, and the Conservatives were at 39% for each one of those polls on the 18th and 15th. And then before that, this was January 7th. The Liberals, this was, I think, right after that Trudeau resigned or announced his resignation. The Liberals are at 26% in that poll. And some of the other polls from Ipsos and Abacus that came out the same day had the Liberals at 20% on that day, when EKOS had the Liberals at 26. So yeah, if they are an outlier, they've been an outlier for like 3 polls already. So I don't know. It's a little suspicious, right? It's a little sus. I'm not accusing anyone of doing anything, so don't sue me. But I would think that, maybe somebody slipped him an envelope full of, what, right? Like let's just, if this was allegedly, if this were to happen, right? And it's like, the Liberals are down in the polls and they need a reason to inject some steroids into their base and pump them up and get them excited. And Trudeau resigning is such a big event, and they're having this leadership race, and they're trying to put a new face to the party, and they need something stimulants to get them going. There's incentive for a poll to come out where it shows that their strategy is working and the surge is happening, and they're making a big comeback, and an envelope full of cold hard cash might just be the thing that solves the issue. I don't know. Again, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, right? And if Frank Graves sees this video, he's probably gonna block me. I haven't gone through the trouble of trolling him on X, so I don't think I'm blocked yet, but I probably will at some point get blocked. But I'm just saying, right? It's a little suspicious that he's just so far off from everyone else that's putting out polls at the same time as he is. But Dom, what do you think about this situation?
I myself as well have asked sort of my circle of community or friends and people who normally still vote up to now Liberal or starting to lean towards the conservative end. And that's a notable pattern that I've been noticing, especially from people who haven't voted on the conservative end previously. And ever since this resignation from Justin Trudeau, I don't think that's necessarily have changed. So I don't see that as a reflection of, this poll necessarily. You can argue because of JT resigning, this closer results can possibly happen, but I don't know if it's or it should be as close as this poll is representing. I think to add on, it is a bit sus, and obviously only time will tell, and then we'll truly know the real result of the election. We can only hope that it ends up being sooner. And I think before, if we're perhaps switching to the American political system topics, I just want to preface by saying, if you guys haven't already, definitely check out the interview with Jordan Peterson and Pierre Poilievre. It's a really fantastic interview. And if you haven't, made up your mind in terms of voting yet, you might want to check out that video, and it might swing you towards the other direction. And maybe this poll will even look a lot different in the near future. But yeah, not advice. You do what you want. So thought it was a good interview.
When it comes to sampling in polls, sometimes it ends up being one pollster who gets it right. So I don't know. But I think, as Dom said and as I said, our sample size is not reflecting. This poll does not reflect what our personal sample size is telling us. And you should go watch that interview with Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, no, I watched that whole interview. It was great. And I agree with you guys. I have not seen any kind of massive sentiment shift of people all of a sudden wanting to vote Liberal. And it just doesn't make sense for me. If you just think about it logically, right? Right now, if you were to say, I'm voting Liberal, who are you voting for? Right? We don't even know who the leader is. So it's are you voting for Freeland? Are you voting for Carney? Or are you voting for Chandra Arya? Who is the Liberal leader, right? So it's yeah, sure, you might not like Pierre, or you might not want Pierre to become the prime minister, but it's if you're committing to voting Liberal,